She was just 16 when the man behind the camera changed her life forever. The world would come to know her as Bo Derek, that sun-kissed goddess running down the beach in the movie 10, the woman every magazine called perfect. But what almost no one knew was the price of that perfection. Behind every dazzling photo, behind every effortless smile, hid a truth too tangled and dangerous for Hollywood to ever show. This isn't the glossy story you've seen before. This is the one whispered about in studio hallways, hidden in contact sheets, and locked away in old negatives labeled private photos that were never meant for the public eye. Moments that capture not fame but the cost of it. Because Bo wasn't born into Hollywood. She was swept into it, pulled by a man 3 decades older who promised her love, then built an empire around her image. To the world, she was the ultimate fantasy. To herself, she was becoming a stranger. Every flashbulb was both a spotlight and a cage. And those who were there say the truth behind the lens was darker than any tabloid could print. What did Bo really endure to become Hollywood's dream girl? What secrets do those private photos reveal? The ones the studios fought to bury. Stay with me, because the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. Bo Derek's story isn't just about beauty, it's about control, obsession, and the thin line between love and captivity. And once you see what those cameras captured, you'll never look at that famous smile the same way again. Fame made her face unforgettable, but love nearly erased who she was. When Bo Derek fell for John Derek, she wasn't chasing a director, she was chasing safety, or at least what looked like it. 16 years old, still learning who she was, she mistook his certainty for strength. He promised to protect her from the chaos of Hollywood, yet he quietly built a world where she belonged only to him. Every choice, her hair, her smile, her silence, became a reflection of his vision. To millions, she was the dream woman, to him, she was the project. The cruelest twist? She believed him when he said it was all for love. Behind closed doors, the line between devotion and control blurred until she could no longer tell them apart. When 10 made her a global icon, the world saw freedom, the sunlit beaches, the perfect body, the fantasy of independence. But the truth was colder. While her name echoed through theaters, she was trapped in a story she didn't write. The girl everyone adored couldn't even choose her own future. She smiled on red carpets while fighting the quiet ache of lost youth. The roles she never took, the friends she left behind, the version of herself that never got to grow up. And when the cameras stopped flashing, that ache didn't fade, it deepened. This wasn't a tragic love story. It was a beautiful illusion, one built on control, wrapped in fame, and sold as passion. But the illusion wouldn't last forever, because what comes after the world's most perfect fantasy? The moment the lights fade, and she finally sees the truth staring back at her in those private photos, the girl she used to be. Bo Derek's story reads like a movie script that no one dared to finish. Born Mary Cathleen Collins in Long Beach, California, she was a beach girl with salt in her hair and sunlight in her eyes, a teenager who dreamed of waves, not fame. Then fate introduced her to John Derek, a seasoned actor turned director during the filming of Once Upon a Love. She was just 16, he was nearly 47. The chemistry between them defied rules, and soon they fled to Europe, leaving behind whispers, outrage, and a film that would never properly see the light of day. By 18, she became Mrs. Derek, not just a wife but a muse molded by her husband's lens. Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with her, until 1979 when 10 turned her into an international phenomenon. The cornrows, the smile, the slow-motion beach run. Suddenly she was the symbol of desire. For a moment she looked unstoppable, but the higher she climbed, the thinner the air became. Then came the downfall. Tarzan, the Ape Man, and Bolero weren't just critical failures, they were cultural shocks. Films wrapped in controversy, rumored exploitation, and artistic confusion. Audiences began to question if she was a victim of her own image or her husband's ambitions. By the time John passed away in 1998, Bo's public stardom had dimmed, but privately she was stepping into peace. The ranch, the animals, the quiet, all the things she'd missed while chasing an idea of perfection. Decades later, she found love again with John Corbett, not as a muse, but as herself. But buried under every serene smile is a timeline inked in sacrifice, each year a reminder of how love and fame can rewrite a life beyond recognition. The screen fades in, waves crash against a golden horizon, and there she is, Bo Derek, running along the sand, hair gleaming in slow motion. It's one of the most replayed images in movie history. Perfection, freedom, desire, all in one frame. But pause that scene for a moment. Look closer. That isn't just a woman enjoying the surf. That's a girl who'd been sculpted, posed, and taught to be the fantasy the world demanded. When 10 hit theaters, audiences saw innocence turn to allure. But behind the lens, the story was heavier. Those so-called private photos from the early shoots tell a different tale, one of a teenager caught in the middle of Hollywood's obsession with youth and control. You can almost feel the tension in her eyes, the pressure to perform, the uncertainty hiding beneath the beauty. In interviews, she later smiled and called those years beautiful chaos. But insiders remember something else: the quiet moments between takes when Bo sat alone staring at the ocean as if waiting for permission to breathe. Those pictures, hidden for decades, capture the stillness no one wanted to see. The public adored the fantasy. The studios printed posters and built marketing around her perfection. Yet for Bo, every photo shoot felt like a negotiation between who she was and who they wanted her to be. It's what made those unseen images so haunting. They weren't glamorous. They were real. The opening of this story isn't just about forbidden pictures. It's about the mask that fame built, a mask so flawless it nearly erased the person behind it. And as the camera pans out from that beach scene, one truth becomes undeniable. The most beautiful image Hollywood ever created was also the most misunderstood. To the outside world, Bo Derek was the embodiment of freedom, that effortless beauty every magazine tried to capture. But behind the glossy covers and camera flashes, she lived under a rule book written by someone else. John Derek wasn't just her husband, he was her architect. Every curl in her hair, every camera angle, every script she read or rejected passed through his approval. He called it guidance. To her, it often felt like invisible handcuffs. Hollywood crowned her a goddess, yet she was treated more like a creation than a creator. While fans saw glamour, she lived a life scheduled around his vision. Friends recalled how Bo rarely made decisions alone. She dressed to please him, spoke carefully to avoid conflict, and learned that silence kept the peace. The world worshipped her image, but the woman beneath it was quietly fading. And then came the contradictions. John was praised for shaping her career, but whispers spread that his control went beyond art. Former collaborators noticed how he discouraged her from working with other directors, how her potential as a serious actress was quietly buried beneath the fantasy roles he preferred. Bo once said she felt lucky, but the way she said it, softly, almost uncertainly, hinted that luck was just another word for surrender. Those private behind-the-scenes photos reveal the divide clearer than any headline ever could. In one, she's radiant under studio lights. In another, her gaze drifts somewhere far away, lost in thought. They capture the distance between image and reality, between the woman the world owned and the one struggling to find her own reflection. And just when she began to believe she could break free, Hollywood gave her another cruel gift: fame that chained her tighter than ever. Every great story has what's said and what's never said. In Bo Derek's case, the silence spoke louder than the dialogue ever could. There's a haunting rhythm to her old interviews: long pauses, small smiles, a gaze that drifts away whenever John's name comes up. She learned early that silence was safer than truth. Hollywood loved her mystery, but that mystery was survival. On screen, Bo was radiant, the dream every director wanted to capture. Off-screen, her stillness told another story. When Fantasies, the film she made at 16, was finally released years later, it became a scandal. What most didn't know was that Bo had begged for it never to surface. The intimate scenes weren't just artistic experiments, they were ghosts of a youth she couldn't reclaim. Each frame held memories of choices she was too young to understand and too loyal to regret out loud. When the critics mocked her later films, they missed the deeper truth. Bo wasn't chasing fame anymore. She was trapped by the past. The more she tried to reinvent herself, the louder the old image echoed. Every failed project, every cruel headline, reminded her of the girl frozen in those early reels. And yet there's power in the quiet. Watch her later interviews closely. The way she pauses before answering, the softness when she says she's at peace. That silence isn't emptiness. It's the sound of someone reclaiming her own story. Because after decades of being directed, posed, and spoken for, Bo Derek learned that the most powerful thing she could do was stop performing. Her silence became her voice, and in those pauses between fame and freedom, she finally found herself again. Some stories are too heavy for the spotlight. Bo Derek carried hers quietly, tucked between interviews and smiles that never quite reached her eyes. After John's death in 1998, the noise of fame finally faded, and in that stillness, fragments of her truth began to surface. It wasn't through scandal or confession, but in small human moments that slipped past the cameras. There were whispers of guilt, not for the career she lost, but for the hearts her love had broken. Linda Evans, John's ex-wife, once spoke of forgiveness, calling Bo a victim of the same man. Bo later admitted she felt haunted by that kindness. The world saw a love story. She saw a chain reaction of hurt. Every success she celebrated carried the shadow of someone else's loss. And then there were the choices she never made. Scripts she turned down, friendships she let dissolve, chances she didn't take because they didn't fit the life she'd been molded into. Those rare private photos, her on horseback, barefoot at her ranch, hair loose and unstyled, capture something raw. They aren't glamorous, they're peaceful. For once, she's not performing, she's existing. In those years alone, Bo found solace not in fame's echo, but in the quiet rhythm of real life. Feeding animals, tending her land, learning who she was without the lens. Then, unexpectedly, love found her again, not as a muse but as an equal. With John Corbett, she didn't have to play a role, she could just be Beau. The secrets she never told weren't shameful, they were sacred, proof that the woman the world once possessed had finally learned the simplest, hardest lesson of all. Freedom isn't earned through fame, it's reclaimed through peace. Scroll through the endless YouTube retrospectives and tabloid rewinds, and you'll notice a pattern. Everyone wants to tell Bo Derek's story, but few ever listen to it. Most videos chase the scandal, the age gap, the controversy, the films that crashed, but they miss the heartbeat behind it all. They turn her life into a timeline of headlines, skipping over the quiet, complicated truth that made her human. Competitor documentaries focus on the spectacle, the forbidden love, the cornrows, the Hollywood exile. They treat her like a myth that burned too fast. But what they overlook is the psychology behind her choices. She wasn't just a young girl under an older man's spell. She was someone trying to make sense of a love that blurred protection with control. In every interview, you can hear her balancing that contradiction, defending him, yet revealing pain between the words. That nuance, the gray space between innocence and complicity, is what gives her story its haunting depth. Others skim the later years, reducing her happiness with John Corbett to a footnote, as if peace isn't as dramatic as pain. But Beau's real evolution happened after the cameras turned away. The transformation from muse to woman, from icon to individual, that's where the true narrative lives. Her life wasn't a scandal, it was a study in survival. She wasn't destroyed by Hollywood's image machine, she quietly outlasted it. While the tabloids moved on to fresher faces, Beau built a life no headline could cheapen. That's what the other storytellers missed. The ending isn't tragedy, it's endurance. The girl who once ran down a beach for the world's gaze eventually found a shoreline where no one was watching, and finally she could breathe. For decades, Bo Derek was seen through everyone else's lens. Directors, photographers, gossip writers, fans. Her story was shaped by what others needed her to be, but time, as it often does, became her quiet revenge. While many Hollywood icons from her era vanished under the weight of nostalgia, Bo re-emerged, not as the dream girl, but as something far more powerful, a woman who owned her narrative. Her second act didn't come through a blockbuster or scandal, it came through absence. She stepped away from the spotlight deliberately, choosing peace over applause. On her California ranch, Bo built a life rooted in simplicity, horses, ocean air, and honest love. There were no staged magazine covers, no dramatic interviews, just the sound of wind, and the rare laughter of someone finally free from the need to perform. What makes her story remarkable isn't what she endured, but how she transformed it. Bo never lashed out or sought pity. She disarmed the world with quiet dignity. In an industry that punishes aging and thrives on confession, she stayed graceful, refusing to be reduced to her past. When she appeared again on talk shows or at charity events, people noticed something different. Her calm. It wasn't the nervous serenity of youth, it was hard-earned peace. And perhaps that's her greatest legacy. She turned what could have been a cautionary tale into a story of reclamation. Those once private photos, now symbols of her journey, no longer represent scandal, they represent survival. The young girl molded by others became a woman who molds her own world. Today, Bo Derek stands as a living contradiction to Hollywood's myth. Beauty fades, fame flickers, but self-respect once reclaimed never leaves. The cameras that once captured her vulnerability now find something stronger in their frame. A woman who didn't just survive the story they wrote for her, she rewrote the ending herself. Bo Derek's story isn't just a chapter of Hollywood nostalgia, it's a mirror reflecting what happens when beauty becomes currency and love turns into control. Behind every glossy poster and perfect photo was a girl who spent years learning that perfection isn't peace, and when the lights finally dimmed, she didn't vanish, she evolved. She found her voice in silence, her truth in solitude, and her freedom far from the cameras that once defined her. In the end, Bo Derek didn't need to be anyone's fantasy. She became something far more powerful herself. Her journey reminds us that behind every icon is a person who bleeds, breaks, and rebuilds. That's why her story endures, not because it's flawless, but because it's real. If you think this story was unforgettable, wait until you see what's next. In our previous feature, we uncover another Hollywood survivor, a woman who faced fame's cruelty long before adulthood and lived to tell the truth they never wanted you to hear. At 60, Brooke Shields reveals the truth they never wanted you to know about her childhood fame. It's a revelation you don't want to miss. So before you scroll away, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because here on Vintage Spotlight, we bring you the untold stories behind the faces that shaped an era. The beauty, the scandal, the silence, all of it. Keep watching. The truth behind Hollywood's golden glow is just getting started.